Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's just dive right into a completely fascinating and honestly incredibly relevant topic that affects just about everyone who pulls up to a fuel pump. Today, we're unpacking the E10 U-Turn, and we're going to explore exactly why the government is rethinking this massive nationwide fuel rollout. Over the last few weeks, there's been this growing wave of everyday vehicle owners voicing some pretty serious frustration over dropping fuel mileage, mysterious engine hesitation, and even straight-up deteriorating fuel hoses. Now, a major policy recalibration is happening at the highest levels of power to figure out how to fix it.
Section 1. The fast-track fuel crisis. Danger for older engines. So, I want to pose a pretty bold question directly to you right off the bat. What if the very eco-friendly fuel that was designed to save the environment actually damaged your engine? Sounds totally backwards, right? You'd think green initiatives are always a win-win. But for millions of everyday drivers, this mechanical danger zone is becoming a very harsh reality. It's gotten to the point where top government economists have suddenly had to step in and suggest hitting the brakes on a major national initiative. And the sheer scale of this problem, it is absolutely staggering. We aren't just talking about a handful of vintage car enthusiasts taking their retro rides out for a Sunday spin. We are talking about 30 crore legacy vehicles. That's roughly 300 million machines on the road today, caught right in the crosshairs of this issue. To break that down a bit more, that massive number includes over 22 crore two-wheelers. These are the everyday scooters and motorcycles driven by commuters, delivery riders, and rural farmers who literally rely on their vehicles just to make a living. Because of this massive scale and the undeniable public frustration over dropped mileage and constant engine trouble, the central government has basically been forced to reconsider their entire strategy. It is super unusual for a government to hit the brakes on a nationwide environmental rollout, but that's exactly what's happening. They're now officially exploring a plan to bring back the older fuel formula, E10 blended petrol, as a dedicated option at fuel stations. It's meant to act as a protective shield for all these older vehicles. Section 2. Understanding E10 versus E20. What's in your petrol? Okay, before we can really understand the high-level policy clash going on, we absolutely need to grasp the baseline chemistry here. The crucial concept is ethanol blending. In simple terms, ethanol is just an organic alcohol made by fermenting things like sugarcane juice, molasses, or surplus grains. Mixing this plant-based alcohol with standard fossil petrol serves two huge national goals. First, it massively cuts down our multi-billion-dollar foreign crude oil import bill, keeping that money at home. And second, it directly supports local farmers by buying up surplus crops, all while lowering tailpipe carbon emissions. So, on a macroeconomic level, it makes total, undeniable sense. So, what exactly is E10? It's just really simple math. When you take 10% organic ethanol and mix it with 90% standard fossil petrol, you get E10 fuel. This specific chemical mixture is exactly what the vast majority of older vehicles currently on the road were engineered to run on. For years, engines were designed with this precise 10% threshold in mind. But here's where the massive problem begins. When you double that alcohol mixture to 20% ethanol and 80% fossil petrol, you get the new E20 fuel. Now, to you and me, jumping from 10 to 20% might sound like a tiny tweak, but inside an automobile engine, chemistry is completely unforgiving. A small percentage change in the fuel mix results in massive physical changes for engine components. Doubling this alcohol is the exact catalyst for this nationwide controversy. Let me break down exactly why engines hate this change. Section 3. The coffee maker analogy. Chemistry inside your engine. To really grasp why older engines simply cannot handle this E20 stuff, think about your engine like a kitchen appliance. Imagine you own a trusty vintage coffee maker built, say, 10 or 15 years ago. It was built with traditional natural rubber seals designed specifically to handle mild, warm water. Works like an absolute charm. But what if you took harsh acidic cleaning vinegar and poured it into the tank? If you had a brand new, modern coffee maker with stainless steel and high-tech synthetic seals, it handles that acidic vinegar with zero issues. But your older machine, those vintage natural rubber gaskets are going to melt and degrade almost immediately. Bringing this directly back to your car or scooter, the mechanics are exactly the same. Just like that concentrated vinegar in an old coffee maker, the corrosive alcohol solvent in E20 aggressively attacks the natural rubber fuel lines of older vehicles. Specifically, we're talking about anything manufactured before 2016, your BS3 and early BS4 vehicles. They were only ever engineered for that 10% max. Forced to run on E20, the rubber literally softens, swells, and cracks. Fuel pump diaphragms start degrading, carburetor seals leak. And to make matters worse, because ethanol has less energy density than fossil petrol, your fuel mileage noticeably drops. It is just a daily expensive frustration.
Section 4. Government rethinks the rollout. The policy pushback. This totally real mechanical crisis actually triggered some intense policy pushback, throwing the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas into emergency review mode. The spark that truly ignited public awareness? Road Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari formally admitted in Parliament that older BS3 vehicles could indeed suffer damage to internal rubber parts and gaskets on E20 petrol. He even recommended that owners actively replace those parts. That was a huge deal. It validated millions of drivers who thought they were going crazy trying to figure out why their perfectly good vehicles were suddenly sputtering. But the real earthquake in this debate came from a crucial intervention by Chief Economic Advisor V. Anantha Nageswaran. He highlighted a fundamental, non-negotiable rule: saving the environment should never bankrupt the consumer. He argued that public policy must carefully balance grand macroeconomic goals with real-world consumer costs. You just can't mandate a 20% ethanol blend when tens of crores of vehicles weren't designed for it. Citizens absolutely need the choice of lower blend fuels like E10 because ignoring the financial hit to the average person is just a recipe for disaster. So this economic reality quickly turned into a major political clash. On one side, you have the centrist policy of an aggressive E20 rollout aimed strictly at national energy independence. On the other side, the opposition is pushing back hard. Leaders like Samajwadi Party chief Akhilesh Yadav have argued that this burden is falling on the wrong shoulders. They point out that everyday citizens, middle-class commuters, rural farmers, two-wheeler delivery riders who need every drop of fuel to survive are bearing the cost of lower mileage and engine repairs. People simply can't afford to just throw away their old scooters and buy brand new E20 models. It is a classic high-stakes collision between grand national strategy and daily on-the-ground reality.
Section 5. Infrastructure and logistical hurdles. Fixing the pumps.
So if the government generally agrees E10 needs to come back to protect consumers, why not just flip a switch and do it tomorrow? Well, fixing the pumps is a lot harder than it sounds. To sell two completely different types of petrol at the exact same station, you have to execute this massive, wildly expensive infrastructure overhaul. First, a petrol pump literally has to dig up the concrete to install dual underground storage tanks. Second, they have to build entirely separate pipeline networks so the fuels don't cross-contaminate. And third, they have to fundamentally modify the actual dispensing units that you pull up to. The physical and financial limitations here are severe. Just picture a super crowded, congested urban petrol pump. They operate on incredibly tight real estate. They usually only have two underground tanks to begin with, one for standard petrol, one for diesel. They literally don't have the space to install a third massive tank without shutting down for major construction. Plus, on a national level, it's a logistical nightmare. Refineries, freight trains, tanker trucks, they'd all have to manage split supply chains simultaneously across the country. Because of this, energy analysts are suggesting a practical bridge solution, rolling out dedicated E10 pumps in high-density Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities first, before tackling rural areas. Section 6. Impact on your wallet. What this means for you. So what does all this infrastructure debate actually mean for your daily commute and your wallet? Let's walk through it. If you're forced to use E20 in a pre-2016 vehicle, you are looking at constant corrosion risks for your hoses, frequent unexpected breakdowns, and terrible fuel mileage. But with the return of E10 in that exact same older vehicle, it is completely safe for your rubber seals because it perfectly matches the original chemistry your engine was built for. The result is no unexpected garage bills, much better cold starts on chilly mornings, and improved mileage, which directly stretches your monthly budget. Broadening out here, what's the really big takeaway? This whole situation highlights a vital lesson about green energy transitions. As we aggressively move toward the future, whether it's ethanol blending, EVs, or biogas, these initiatives are absolutely essential for our economic and environmental health. But the crucial takeaway is that a successful green transition simply cannot abandon the millions of citizens still relying on older machines. A real transition requires tiered options, fairness, and honestly, actively listening to consumer feedback to maintain public trust. To summarize everything we've unpacked today, balancing aggressive green energy goals with everyday vehicle reliability is just a necessary recalibration for our roads. The government exploring the return of E10 petrol isn't a step backward against the environment. It is a highly practical, consumer-first step designed specifically to protect over 30 Coral legacy vehicles from serious mechanical challenges. I want to leave you with one final thought-provoking question before you go.
If your local petrol pump started offering both options tomorrow, would you be willing to pay a slight premium to fill your older car with safe E10 petrol? Or would you stick with standard E20 and risk the repairs? Let me know your thoughts on this. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking great questions, and I will catch you next time.